Everyone, my name is Dr. Alice Fong and welcome to my Healing Around the World project. Today I have the great opportunity to introduce to you Dr. Ivy Brennan. She is a graduate at Bastyr University and she also received her undergraduate degree in biochemical engineering from Rutgers University. And she is located here in New York, the Big Apple. So please welcome Dr. Ivy Brennan.
Hi.
Great. Wonderful. So, Dr. Ivy, what brought you into naturopathic medicine? What was your story that led you here?
It's sort of a long story, and as you mentioned before, I was a biochemical engineer, and I did the logical thing. I worked for two different pharmaceutical companies. The first one I worked for was a vaccine company, and then the second one I worked on inhalable insulin. And the whole time, I always felt like that there was a better way that I could be making a difference. And I really wanted to work more directly with people rather than just being behind a computer screen in a cubicle and really very separate from the people that were benefiting from my work. But I just really had no idea what that was. And I ended up moving to Connecticut for my second company, and I met my neighbor who was going to a homeopath. And I had never heard of homeopathy before, and I was kind of curious, so I took a book out of the library, and for some reason when I read this book it just really, I drew very near to it, and it just sounded like something that I would want to do. And I did a Google search and I found this homeopath out in California who actually had been an electrical engineer and had gone to MIT. And so I was like, wow, so if another engineer could go into this seemingly woo-woo kind of alternative profession, maybe there's a place for me in that too. So naturally, I gave this woman a call and we talked for over an hour, which was interesting because there's been a couple other times where I've thought about different career paths and I've consulted with people, but she was so generous with her time. And after we talked, she said, you know, you're young, you're single, you don't have all this baggage. Rather than going into, a weekend program once a month for 1 or 2 years, you should really look into naturopathy. Well, I had no idea what naturopathy was either, but I had the good fortune that I was living in Connecticut, which is one of the licensed states, and also where they have a university, so I met with some naturopaths. At that time, the University of Bridgeport had only been around for 5 or 6 years, so most people really steered me towards Bastyr, which I think at the time was around for 25 or 30 years, so it was more of an established program or school. And I think it was a great opportunity because otherwise I probably would have never left the New York City metro area. So it was a good opportunity to pack my bags and go west.
Great, yeah, explore a new coast.
Right.
Great. And why did you decide to come back to the East Coast and practice in New York?
You know what? It was actually a really hard decision because I really had the opportunity to practice anywhere. I actually had always really kind of been leaning more towards the unlicensed states, which New York is. I think that unlicensed states, just as much as the licensed states, need our presence.
Absolutely.
I had, when I first started the program, I always thought I was going to go back to Connecticut. And then I got this strange fascination with Texas, specifically Austin, and I actually went out there for a week our last year. And I loved it, but at the same time, I think New York had always been sort of the back of my mind, but it was just like very, it's an expensive city, it's a cold city, could I make it? And at the same time that I was in Austin, somebody else had gone to New York, and after talking to her for maybe 5 or 10 minutes, I was like, actually, I want to give New York a shot. And I reached out to some other naturopaths just to see, like Serena, who works with Christine. I reached out to a bunch just to see if it was a good option, and I've been here for 7 years, so I love it.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Great. And what types of patients do you see in New York, or what are some conditions that you commonly see in this area?
Ironically, I feel like I've actually seen everything.
Oh, really?
I really have. I mean, I've had some cancer patients. I had an HIV patient, but and then even some conditions that were there's really minor conditions. I mean, they're grave conditions, but that were on the board exam you didn't even think you'd ever see. But the majority of my patients, and actually at one time I had 2 offices. One here in New York City and one by my parents, and my family's from South Jersey, which is also very interesting having two practices because I kind of saw two different types of patient populations. So the practice here up in New York has been historically mostly women, and so I see a lot of female health concerns from PMS. I've been seeing a lot of PMDD, which is a very more extreme form of PMS, where women can have suicidal ideation, women transitioning through menopause. I see a lot of cervical dysplasia and HPV. I really enjoy that work because a lot of these women are so desperate, they're so scared, and the fact that I have a natural solution for them so that they don't have to do something like the LEAP procedure is just like such a great gift to be able to give to somebody. I have worked a lot with fertility, and then basics of like endometriosis, cysts, and then I've worked a fair bit with both hypothyroid and Graves' disease. I actually really like working with Graves' disease because that's another one of these things to really amaze endocrinologists, that you don't necessarily have to go on the medication. And then I've been training, actually recently, getting a lot of teen and adult acne in my practice.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And what are some of your approaches to treating some of these conditions that you just mentioned?
Well, one of the things, and specifically when I have a patient first come to see me, I always talk a little bit about naturopathic medicine, basically because out here nobody's even heard of the term naturopathic medicine.
Yes.
And my ideal approach is really focusing mostly on lifestyle and diet, and of course always trying to find the cause.
Absolutely.
And so often when I have a patient come in, I will, if they haven't had a proper workup, meaning labs, I will make, so one of the things here, I'm an unlicensed, so I can never make these types I cannot order labs, but what I can do is give them recommendations to take back to their primary care physician. And then I have quite a few endocrinologists, gynecologists, internal medicine doctors that I readily refer to. So if for some reason, often I see a lot of patients, they don't even have a medical doctor. They haven't seen somebody in a long time. And so I help them establish care with someone while they work with me, because I'm always trying to figure out, I'd rather know what's going on with them than just giving them some kind of herb that might help their symptoms, because I feel like that's no better than if they were to take a pharmaceutical, except for that you have less side effects.
Right. Absolutely. And it's great that you work integratively with other providers to be able to refer back and forth.
Right.
Yes. Wonderful. So do you have any pieces of advice to someone who might have limited access to healthcare or who might not be able to come see you in person? What would you like to tell them?
Well, I think one of the like when we're thinking about like the foundations of health, and I think sometimes like we don't talk about this enough, one of the most important things is really developing some sort of mindfulness practice. Because when we think about it, most chronic conditions are all caused by stress. Right. And the more that we can develop different mindfulness techniques, it's a way of basically preventing the stress reaction in our bodies. Not just, I mean, almost like everything when you think about, like, not just like the inflammation that's occurring in the body, but even like when we think about like, the choices we make. The more mindful we are, the less stressed we are, the less likely we're going to like, reach for foods that are harmful for us. The more likely that we'll get better sleep, the more likely that we will exercise, the more likely that we will get taken over by what's going on. And, two things that I always recommend for patients specifically, because sometimes meditation can be very overwhelming. And I always even tell them that, like, actually, when you're stressed out, that's not the time to really develop a meditation practice. Meditation is more of a preventative. But two specific ways that I really like to help with patients with mindfulness is first, this idea of monotasking. So really being present with the task at hand, whether it's simply washing the dishes or even eating. It's just kind of can be sort of a nice gateway towards a practice like meditation.
Interesting.
Or another one that I often like to do is breath work. And I find that can be very helpful because, again, it is a mindfulness practice because you're placing your mind on the breath and you're being mindful of, and also having more, puts you more in your body. But it's a little bit more active than say a sitting meditation, which can be very overwhelming. I get a lot of patients. I rarely ever recommend that for beginners.
Right.
Yeah. And then whatever practice you choose, it's best to be consistent with it. It's not something to do, once in a while. It's sort of like the same idea as I tell them, like going to the gym. You can't expect to go to the gym once and have like a buff, hot body, nor can you expect to have peace by only doing meditation once.
That makes absolute sense. And I agree. I tell my patients that meditation is hard. Like focusing on one thing or letting go of everything in your head is challenging. So starting with breath work is a great way to begin. And I'm sure a lot of people in New York have a lot of stress to deal with.
Yes.
So
that's why I love working in New York, because there's a plethora of patients there's so many people I can help.
Right. There's a lot of stressed out people that could benefit from your services. Well, Dr. Ivy Brennan, thank you so much for being a part of my project. And thank everyone for watching. Please share this video and future videos with everyone you know and spread the word about healing around the world.
Thank you, Alice.
Thank you.